Hi folks, and welcome to Tech Talk. My name is Anu. My guest today is Kamakshi Sivaramakrishnan of LinkedIn. Come join me. Kamakshi, thanks for being on the show. It's great to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So you are founder and CEO of a company called Drawbridge. Drawbridge was recently acquired by LinkedIn. A hearty congrats to you on that.
Thank you very much.
Great news. Drawbridge is an enterprise technology company, and it has built a people-based identity graph and a cross-device advertising platform. It uses machine learning and matches individuals across connected devices. Devices such as the desktop, tablets, smartphones, and connected TVs. Drawbridge raised $70 million and was backed by Sequoia Capital and Kleiner Perkins. You have been named by Forbes as one of the most powerful women in technology. My first question to you is, what motivated you to start Drawbridge, and what is the problem that it solves?
When we put ourselves in the shoes of an average consumer, our interactions today with the world around us is split. Time spent on any given device is now split across multiple devices. And with every passing day, we have new and new emerging devices that become a part of the devicescape that we interact with. So from a marketer perspective or from a brand perspective, when you're thinking about communicating with consumers, you're thinking about how do I reach a consumer from a messaging perspective, marketing perspective, advertising perspective, whatever be it, no matter what device that they are on. So this ties to this fundamental problem around understanding that consumer identity. And Drawbridge's position was we are leveraging AI and machine learning from a technology perspective to develop this consumer identity asset or this identity graph asset that fundamentally enables marketers to solve that precise problem of understanding their consumer identity. And through that, we effectively built the largest independent identity graph in the ecosystem. We helped hundreds and thousands of customers, hundreds of customers directly, thousands of customers through our channel partners, to be able to then help them through the entire marketing funnel communicate and manage relationships, be that with their consumers or for that matter, customers. We are very excited now to do that, but at a much larger scale of hundreds of thousands of customers, potentially millions of customers across LinkedIn and Microsoft, and do that at scale, again, built on this fundamental foundation of that identity graph.
Kamakshi, Drawbridge has been one of the fastest growing businesses here in the US. Can you talk a little bit about how you grew and scaled the model?
For sure. Scale for us at Drawbridge, I would say, is multidimensional. Scale of technology, scale of product, scale of data. The identity graph is effectively a data asset. So scale of data, we are talking about touching billions of consumers, billions of devices, hundreds of millions of touch points across each of these devices. So scale of handling the data, processing it through the infrastructure, developing the technology behind that. So there's scale there. Developing the product asset and packaging that per the needs of our customers, there's scale there. And then certainly there's scale of customers in terms of adoption. There's a pent-up demand, to my point of democratizing identity earlier, that, as we broke customer by customer, our ability to scale was really fast. We reached thousands of customers through our channel partnership and hundreds of customers directly. And now as a part of LinkedIn, we really are excited to reach a very large scale of enterprises, be that at LinkedIn or potentially including Microsoft as well. That's scaling at a whole entire different order of magnitude, a different level as well.
So as I mentioned earlier, you were funded backed by Sequoia Capital and Kleiner Perkins. These are powerhouses. From the perspective of a founder and a CEO, what would you say are some misconceptions that entrepreneurs have when it comes to raising capital?
Sure. I don't know if I would necessarily phrase it as misconceptions as much as, I'm looking for the right word, maybe sort of fear or trepidation. Yeah. Because for most entrepreneurs, it's sort of the first time you're in front of sort of this august body of investors who have done this many times over. So there is an asymmetry right there. You're speaking to an audience who has done this many times over. They negotiate for a living. That's their strong skill set. and then you're doing this for the first time. So that asymmetry is something I think all entrepreneurs are conscious about. But obviously this problem becomes much easier for repeat entrepreneurs. Now let's say that if I ever go back into founding another company, I learned from my experience and from my knowledge of having gone through this over the course of so many years. So I come in sort of from a different perspective there. So I come in from a, relatively speaking, a position of strength. Sure. Whereas sort of the majority of the cases of financing are first-time entrepreneurs. So from my perspective, that's sort of getting adjusted to that, the discomfort around that, the fear around that, the fear around the unknown is sort of what I'd sort of probably focus on. And my advice, to the extent that I have lived this, is rely on the strength that you have the most, you as the entrepreneur. You have the strength of sort of, understanding of the market, the opportunity. Especially if it's a tech-based startup, you understand the technology better than sort of your audience. So that conviction should give you the confidence to be there in sort of front of that group. You are decidedly more knowledgeable than most people in that audience. So from my perspective, I would characterize, instead of misconception, I would say probably it's sort of the fear of the unknown and kind of the discomfort around it. And my sort of advice, to the extent, how we tackle that, is derive confidence from what you're most good at.
That's right. Kamakshi, you have a PhD from Stanford University in information theory. That is such a mathematical, theoretical field. And, one that does that type of stuff generally ends up in academia. I'm so interested to hear your journey into entrepreneurship.
Indeed. In fact, I just met my PhD advisor a couple weekends back, and that reminded me that when I was graduating from Stanford and I started this journey around entrepreneurship through this company AdMob, he was heartbroken that I was not going into academia. But that kind of brings me to this point and today he's incredibly proud of sort of the journey that I've personally gone through. It's an interesting one. PhD is about sort of solitude. It's between you, your individual topic of research that is sort of very focused. PhD is about doing that one thing and going really deep into it. And entrepreneurship is about spreading your wings and solving for problems across product, across technology, across marketing, across finance, across G&A, understanding people communication skills. It's really interesting that most technology founders come in as either with some form of an engineering background, and you have to develop all these skills. So it's really an interesting journey of evolution. The extent I've evolved over the course of the last 8 years of this entrepreneurship, I'm so incredibly fortunate that I've gone through this. So that I've gone from sort of, learning to solve that one problem, going really deep into it, which I still do, but having sort of this gamut of skills that were honestly by consequence, because entrepreneurs, especially in the early days, you don't have the support system for many of sort of the different functions that need to be fulfilled in the company. So you're forced to wear multiple hats, but then you learn, right? Then that learning process is incredibly sort of both fortunate for the entrepreneur, and it's a great experience. So I'd say sort of that's my journey from sort of this PhD in information theory to entrepreneurship. And another aspect for this is sort of, you're so good at engineering, but the enterprise of a business involves taking that technology to market. From technology to product to marketing to finance to people to all those communication skills. That kind of, expanding your repertoire has been very, very fulfilling for me.
Sure. Now, tell me about your childhood. Where did you grow up and what was your family like?
Sure. I grew up in Bombay. And at a time when India has seen this explosive growth over the course of the last couple of decades, and I grew up at a time where we were at sort of the early parts of that kind of breakthrough growth that India as an economy has had. So I was a part of. I grew up in I would argue that we were probably a lower middle class family, but all through this, my mother would, as she was raising me, would constantly emphasize on the value of education. I still remember her telling me that, look, we're not going to leave a huge inheritance for you, But what I'm going to give you is sort of education that helps you sort of in your journey of life in ways that you want to grow and build yourself. And the more important thing here is that I don't think that she even articulated fearlessness the way I learned it from her. It was the way she conducted herself, the way she had ambitions for herself and myself. I imbibed sort of the early sort of traits of being fearless. And I think that's why sort of the risk taking, which is sort of inherently needed in entrepreneurship, I think I had it somewhere in me to a point right now where it scares her, the kinds of sort of, the fearlessness that I would have. So I'd say sort of my upbringing, my childhood is just like, many people. But the evolution for me has been incredibly sort of fruitful and fulfilling. And I would say a lot of credit goes to my mother in the early days for giving me that sense of drive.
Was she also the one, or who was the person that was most influential that really instilled in you to go outside of your comfort zone? Who was that
I'd
person?
say that, it's through the years, there are many people in your life who influence that. I'd say certainly to this earlier point I was making, my mother was she subconsciously instituted fearlessness in me. I'd say through the later years in my life now, my husband has been a very big part of that as well. I strongly believe that, especially in entrepreneurship, getting comfortable with being uncomfortable is a reality that we all kind of live in. And as a result of that, I think this sort of, I remember I have a fear of these crazy rides, and he would be like, let's go and try this out. What could be the worst, right? So I think that kind of the everyday developments that you have in yourself when you kind of encounter every moment of fear. And then you take sort of, all these, leading examples of Indra Nooyi, who is the CEO of PepsiCo, and she's done so well for herself. She's had sort of a similar journey of her life. And sort of seeing these kind of people, I don't know if I'd necessarily say role models, but seeing their stories play out, they absolutely have gone through these journeys themselves as well. Oh, yeah. And so I would say that it's both sort of a combination of personal and professional and people around you, both near and distant, that kind of influence and shape you towards sort of having this kind of fearlessness drive, if you may.
Yeah. Let's talk about your leadership style. What is your leadership style? How would you describe it?
I think it comes from a point where I'm a first-time entrepreneur, first-time founder, first-time CEO. And I think I was very conscious of the fact that I'm doing many of these things for the first time. One thing that's a decided fact in all of this is that you're going to make mistakes. And you have to come from a sense of empathy both for yourself and for the people around you. So I think I would say that there are probably two dimensions I would characterize my sense of leadership or my leadership style. One would be that sense of empathy. And one would be, which I don't know if it's an orthogonal dimension, but very related, is that lead from the front rather than lead from the back. Your team has to have that sense of belief in you because it's uncharted territory and there's a lot of unknown there. So when you lead from the front, you're basically saying, look, I'm going to do this with you, before you, and I'm going to have the same scars that you're going to have. So that kind of creates the sense of togetherness, the team, the spirit, and allowing people to learn by making mistakes is sort of the empathy that goes along with that. I'm obviously a work in progress as far as sort of leadership style and philosophy is concerned, but these two have been true for me thus far. And I'm really inspired by Jeff at LinkedIn as well, and his sense of empathy to compassion. That's something I'm learning.
It's so beautifully articulated. Thank you for that. So then, what do you not really like about leadership?
I don't know if I would say not like. I would talk about sort of the discomforts in leadership. It takes a while to get comfortable in sort of any role that you play in, right? I think from a leadership perspective, it takes time to understand sort of how do you manage or how do you evolve from managing sort of yourself to managing a small team to managing, a department to managing an entire company. It's basically the evolution from a manager to a leader. And that means that you're optimizing for the collective good and not for the individual. That means there are going to be some points of discomfort among a few. There are going to be points of comfort among a few. There are going to be some points of suboptimality among a few. There are going to be some points of optimality among a few. So, but you're optimizing for the collective versus the individual. And that takes a while to kind of get comfortable with. That takes a while to understand and how to be good at. And that's sort of what for me has been my evolution of leadership thus far, and it's absolutely an ongoing journey.
Sure. So when faced with two equally qualified candidates, how do you determine whom to hire?
I'd say that I think the one thing that I had a certain degree of subconscious awareness when I was at Drawbridge, and now that has taken a much stronger sense inside of LinkedIn, is the sense around diversity. So when you have equally good candidates, you obviously have to kind of lean on any dimension of diversity that is sort of your core imperative. From my perspective, being a woman in tech, gender diversity was something that I do, and I very much will have sort of a strong sense of purpose around. So leaning on gender diversity was something that I would focus on a fair amount. And now something that I'm observing and learning inside of being at LinkedIn, that diversity has so many different shapes, sizes, and forms. And LinkedIn is so sort of fundamental. It's a part of sort of their fundamental foundational sort of principles, but also very good at executing. In the short time I've been there, I've been really impressed, and I want to incorporate that as well. So right now I'm focusing much more on how we can improve the gender diversity in tech, but learning from some of the LinkedIn principles, how to increase that diversity more beyond gender diversity to the other shapes and forms of diversity as well.
Sure. How is it different being a woman entrepreneur when compared to your male counterparts?
Women entrepreneurs is sort of a very broad definition, right? But when you kind of narrow it down a little bit from women entrepreneurs to women tech entrepreneurs, and especially women tech entrepreneurs in enterprise technology, which was kind of what Drawbridge has been about, it's basically a very narrow funnel of the number of women who kind of are enterprise tech women founders. So, and I think this is true across the funnel of women entrepreneurs, but probably particularly true among women enterprise tech founders and entrepreneurs, is that since there are such few of us, I think the amplification factor is very strong. So whether you're in a meeting, whether you're in a panel, whether you're in media or on stage, the recall factor as a result of such few of us is very high among people or the audience. So that means you do well, it gets amplified. You make a mistake, that also gets amplified. I think that subconscious awareness and the conscious awareness is probably something that all of us carry as a sense of responsibility. So I'd say that for me, that's probably sort of one difference I would note as. And I reckon that probably male entrepreneurs don't feel that sort of enhanced sense of responsibility there, if you may.
Sure. So when it comes to balancing family and work, do you believe that women can have it all?
I'd probably draw on my life to answer that question. I'd say that it's a quest of balancing the perennial imbalance. And I don't know if I would phrase it as have it all. I would say have it all over a period of your lifetime. So at any given moment, you're probably not going to have it all. But over a period of life, you get the things that are most important to you. So drawing from my own lesson, I think for me, my first child was Drawbridge. And I'm a mother, a new parent of a 6-month-old. In fact, today she's going to be 6 months. So I'd say that, did I have it all in the early parts of my life? No. Do I have it all now? No. But I have new facets of addition in my life. And if you look at my life on a longer term average, I'd have the things that I optimize and I most need.
Yeah, well said, well put. So knowing what you know today, all the wisdom and experience that you've gained, what is some advice that you wish you would have heard but you didn't hear when you first started as an entrepreneur?
I think I'm going to bring it to kind of some brass tacks sort of responsibilities an entrepreneur who is a founder and a CEO carries. See, a company is about the collective ownership in the form of actually equity ownership into the company. That is the drive, and that is sort of the attraction, and that's the motivation why many sort of, be that an engineer, a marketer, or a product manager, or a controller, or an HR business partner joins sort of the uncertainty and the earliness of a startup. It is all a function of their equity ownership into the company. So managing what is called the cap table, which captures this equity ownership, is something that you're never taught. And I don't know if that is something that is well sort of understood by an entrepreneur before he or she becomes one. I think, having every VC or every investor, or especially the firms like, Secure, Kleiner, etc., should take it a point after they invest in the company to give some real concrete sort of, data points, lessons, learning, and impart knowledge on the best of the breed and some of the mistakes as well. We learn most from the mistakes that we've all made. I think learning to manage a cap table is a lesson I wish I had learned before I started the company, because you're going to make mistakes, you learn from it, and then you correct them. You're going to be in some suboptimal state, but then I wish I had learned it before I started it rather than learning it the hard way.
Yeah. Kamakshi, what is it? Is there anything about entrepreneurship that scares you?
No, I think if it had scared me, I wouldn't have been one. And if it scares you, then take your time to be one. I'd say that prepare yourself to be an entrepreneur. Is the more prepared you can be in terms of what does it take to succeed, whether it's a technology entrepreneurship or it's another kind. I think the more you can prepare for what's to come gives you a better chance of being a better leader, a better entrepreneur, a better CEO, better operator, etc. So I think you attack being scared by being prepared.
Sure. What would you say is one word that best describes you?
I've had many people use one word to describe me. Man, each one of them has used a different word to describe me. So I'll give you examples of some of those words. Tenacious, relentless, fearless, brilliant, technologist, theorist. These are all sort of words that have been used, but I think the undercurrent is somewhere around this huge conviction that I've had in the product, in the technology that was the heart of Drawbridge. I think that probably translated into sort of this theme around being relentless, being fearless, and really gunning for what we believed in as sort of the collective vision, mission, and purpose of the company Drawbridge.
Thanks for coming on the show. It has been so great getting to know you and learn more about you. And again, congrats on the acquisition by LinkedIn. And I wish you all the best. And I hope to see you sooner again than later. And folks, thanks for joining us. We will see you next time. Bye-bye.